Hey everybody, and this video brings us out to Orlando, Florida, maybe Lake Buena Vista, Florida. For the sake of today's video, let's just say we are in Vineland, Florida, the ghost town of Vineland, Florida, a town that by the 1960s began to basically disappear. The post office went away, the train tracks were dug up, and the town of Vineland, Florida became a bit of a ghost town. Not many people living out here anymore. The town's actually gone under a couple of different names, gone by a couple of different names over the last X amount of decades. Now, a lot of businesses will say we're in Orlando. Some will say Lake Buena Vista. Some will say some other towns. So depending on who you talk to, depending on what addresses you look up, depending on what you see on the map, we could be in a couple of different towns. But for the sake of today's video, again, we're gonna say we're in the ghost town, the old town of Vineland, Florida, right outside Orlando. Literally, well, if you could throw a stone really far, literally a stone's throw away from Walt Disney World. Disney is right down the road, maybe like 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes tops down the road is Walt Disney property. We are right by Disney World. But the reason why we are out here today in a parking lot of a Publix grocery store. If you're not familiar with Publix, I realize a lot of people who aren't from the South probably have no idea what Publix is. If you're from the South, you have one of these probably every three miles. There's literally one of these every 15 seconds. It's insane how many Publix there are down here in Florida. But if you're not familiar with this area, you're not familiar with Publix, Publix is a very large grocery chain. We are now standing in the parking lot of a Publix. But the reason why we are out here today is not to talk about Publix. We are out here today to talk about something that sits in this parking lot of the Publix. Something that I've been wanting to see for a while now. Something that I've had on my bucket list of things to show you guys and to document and talk about with you guys before I even moved down here. Now, like 2 years later, I'm finally getting around to actually showing this off to you guys. So this is pretty awesome. This is cool. This is definitely something I had to get out here to show you. Again, we are in the parking lot of a Publix grocery store. This whole area at one point was woods. That's what this was. It was a whole wooded area. We were basically standing in a little bit of a forest, if you will, a whole wooded area, about 5 acres of wooded area. And what sat in this 5 acres of wooden area was hidden. Not a lot of people knew about this. If you lived out here, maybe you knew about this, but if you lived out here, you probably didn't know about this. Honestly, not many people knew this existed. It was hidden in the woods down this road that was not a dirt road from what I could see from pictures, but a road that definitely hadn't been very well maintained. It was crumbling, it was falling apart, and this was hidden off in the woods down this little trail that if you knew about or you were looking for it, you could find it, but otherwise you probably had no idea this was here. So it's actually kind of awesome now that this sits in the parking lot of a shopping center. Scott Henderson, he was the owner of this land, sold the land to the developers to put in a shopping center, to put in the apartments down there, but he did not sell off this one tiny little plot of land. He still owns this one little tiny section here in the parking lot of this 5 acres he sold off. He still owns this one little section here to preserve this for forever, for future generations to come out and to see the Vineland Cemetery, the 1924, the 101-year-old Vineland Cemetery that now sits here in the parking lot of a shopping center, of a Publix. Pretty interesting. And I think this is so incredibly cool because, again, before the shopping center was here, before the apartments were here, this was hidden. Really, nobody knew about this hidden cemetery back here, featuring, I guess that's a way of putting it, which has the graves of 2 Civil War soldiers. But the interesting thing is we are in the South. These are not Confederate Civil War soldiers. These are Yankees. These are Union Civil War soldiers buried here in the Vineland Cemetery, which in my opinion makes this even more unique and interesting because usually when we go to cemeteries down here in the South, it's normally Confederate soldiers, but not this time. We've got some Yankees buried down here in the South. We have, looks like Corporal W. Ludwig. He was from the 1st New York Light Artillery. And we have Chase H. Foster. He was from the 3rd Massachusetts Cavalry. And they are out here buried. Apparently there were other people buried here at one point as well. Some other I think, soldiers buried here as well, but they had been removed a long time ago by the family members. These are the last 2 graves that are out here at the Vineland Cemetery that are now being remembered, that are now out here for people to come out and see and to read. This has become a bit of a tourist attraction, if you will, kind of a roadside attraction. A cemetery sort of turned into a roadside attraction, which to some people might seem wrong, but in my opinion, I think that's absolutely fantastic, because I always say cemeteries should be walked through. They should be documented. I love walking through cemeteries and reading the names of people who are buried there, because these people should be remembered, not forgotten. These people were essentially forgotten. They were in the middle of the woods. This is a whole wooded area. Nobody really knew these graves were back here. Now they're out here being remembered and loved and properly taken care of. I believe the stipulations in the contract for when this whole land was sold was that the owners of the shopping center, they actually have to maintain the cemetery. They do not own this land. They do not own the cemetery, that the land that the cemetery sits on, but they do have to maintain it. They have to maintain the gate, the shrubbery. They have to come out here and mow. This whole area has to be properly maintained by the actual shopping center. Very awesome of Scott Henderson, again, the original owner of this land, and I believe who still owns the cemetery, the land of the cemetery sits on. Very awesome of him to do that. He wanted to make sure that if he did sell this land, that the owners would not tear this up. They would not remove the graves and put them somewhere else. He wanted this grave site, this cemetery, to remain untouched. It's a small little area. It wasn't that difficult to do. You could park a couple of cars here, maybe like 3 or 4 cars here. You didn't really need this cemetery to be dug up, but it probably would have been if it wasn't written into the contract when the land was sold that this cemetery had to remain here and had to be properly maintained. So very awesome, very cool. 2 Yankees buried down here in the South, in the Vineland Cemetery, being now remembered. There are flags out here. People come out here to pay their respects. I've seen pictures of people leaving flowers out here. People remember these names. That is why I think this is so incredibly awesome and amazing. People get forgotten about. As people die and then generations go on and on and on, those people become forgotten. Someday I'll be forgotten. Someday when I pass away and then my son passes away, and if he had grandchildren, maybe hopefully I get to meet my grandchildren, they might pass away, and then as generations go on, Grandpa Dave will be completely forgotten about. That happens. I think about my father who passed away, my father who never met my son, my father who never met my niece. They were both born after he had passed away. So my niece and my son, his grandchildren, never actually got to meet him. So they won't remember him. They won't remember my dad, Pop-Pop or Grandpa, whatever we probably would call him, Pop-Pop. Pop-Pop David. My dad was also a David. Pop-Pop David, they will not ever really remember him and talk about him because they never met him. So he will be forgotten pretty fast, which is a horrible thing to think about. But that's what happens. People get forgotten about. You get buried, and as time goes on, as generations go on, you get forgotten about, which is why, again, I love visiting cemeteries. I love walking through cemeteries. I love seeing graves and reading names and documenting them and showing them to you guys. And I love that these 2 Civil War soldiers, these 2 patriots out here, are being properly taken care of and remembered out here in the ghost town, we'll say, of Vineland, Florida. Pretty awesome, pretty cool. Had to get out here. Had to see these guys. Had to see these guys. I gotta go in there and get into Publix to get myself some caffeine. Pretty awesome that these guys are being remembered, that these 2 soldiers are out here being properly taken care of and remembered. That is amazing. 2 soldiers that were kind of hidden at one point, now properly being remembered in a parking lot of a shopping center, of a grocery store, of a Publix grocery store, sits the Vineland Cemetery. It's unique. It's interesting, it's weird, again, kind of become a bit of a roadside attraction, if you will, but these 2 soldiers are being properly remembered, which means, to me anyway, that this is absolutely fantastic. That's how this should be. People being remembered forever. That is awesome. So kudos to the original owner, Scott Henderson, for keeping the cemetery here, for making it so the new owners of this land that he sold it to have to keep this maintained, have to keep these soldiers here, have to keep this cemetery living for people to come out to and and visit and see, so they can come out here and pay their respects to these soldiers. So awesome, so cool. But all right, guys, I'm gonna let you guys go. How to drive out here, right by Walt Disney World. If you guys want to see this and you're visiting Walt Disney World, we are, again, literally like 2 or 3 minutes down the road from Walt Disney World. So if you do want to see this and you are visiting, if you're into roadside attractions, roadside oddities, and weird things, kind of like cemeteries sitting in the middle of a shopping center, in the parking lot of a shopping center, this is your thing, you like this, and you're visiting Walt Disney World, and you want to take maybe a morning to come out here, we are just a couple of minutes down the road from Walt Disney property. You can drive over here really quickly, take a look at these, take some pictures, pay your respects to these soldiers that will forever be remembered, that are no longer hidden in the middle of the woods. They're now out here on display for everybody to come out here and see and pay their respects to in the middle of a parking lot. Pretty cool. But all right, guys, that's gonna do it. So as always, thank you all so much for checking out this video. Be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, check down below for links to Patreon, check down below for links to Spreadshirt, hit the join button to become a member of this channel to gain early access to all of my videos. And if you guys watch this video all the way until the very end, hashtag Yankees in the South. I'm a Yankee in the South. I got 2 more Yankees here in the South. I love it. Hashtag Yankees in the South. If you guys watch this video all the way until the very end. But all right, again, that's going to do it, guys. Like I said, thanks for watching. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And if you do hit that subscribe button or you are subscribed, then I will see you guys in the next video. And if you've ever been out here to the Vineland Cemetery, leave your comments down below. I want to hear from you guys. Very awesome. 1924 cemetery, 101-year-old cemetery. What's hidden in this sort of ghost town, now here in the middle of a parking lot for people to remember, for people to come out and see. This is so cool. This is awesome. I don't want to leave. This is too neat. What an awesome thing to do. Anyway, guys, again, that's going to do it. So like I said, thanks for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Bye.